switch gears and ask you about what happened the other day at your town hall, because you got a lot of attention for it. A man stood up and started throwing false allegations your way about your son Hunter Biden and his work in Ukraine and your work as vice president then in Ukraine, and you responded by calling him a damn liar. And then you challenged him to push-ups, and then you asked him for an IQ test?
No, he came along, and he said he's entitled to do this. He said, you're too old. He said, you're too old. I can't vote for somebody as old as you. I said, okay. And he was challenging what kind of shape. So I kidded. I said, want to do a push-up contest? I was joking. Look, he's lying. You acknowledge what he said wasn't even true. None of the mainstream media believes any of that was true.
I think it was the tone. It was the tone that was off-putting to people.
As my mother said, God love you, dear. Everybody knows the issue here is not what I did, because no one has produced one scintilla of evidence that I did anything other than do my job for America as well as anybody could have done it. Making sure that we, in fact, got rid of a corrupt prosecutor who everybody, including our allies, as well as the IMF and everyone else said has to go. I did my job incredibly well. And even the people in his administration have testified to my character, testified to my honesty. So
but you know it didn't look good for Hunter Biden to be on that board, even if he did nothing wrong. The optics weren't good. And you talk a lot about what it means to be a Biden and the integrity that is imbued in that family name. But there were former White House aides of yours who tried to warn you about the potential conflicts of interest.
Nobody warned me about a potential conflict of interest. Nobody warned me about that. And at the same time,
George Kent, the State Department official, testified that he raised it to you
and
your
didn't
staff.
say
To your
me.
staff.
He did not
to your
say
staff.
I
stand corrected.
Never heard that once.
To your staff. And your staff told him he has no bandwidth.
Well, my son was dying.
Matters.
I guess that's why he said it, because my son was on his deathbed.
Much later.
The time when he was vice president, right? Whether Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's business dealings at the time he served as vice president. Overall, if you look here, 61% of Americans think Joe Biden was involved. You can see partisanship drives this, right? Obviously, nearly all Republicans, 90%, believe that. This has been a major storyline and talking point on Fox News and elsewhere. 64% of independents believe that Biden was involved in Hunter's business dealings. 28% of Democrats. And I want to show you, of that 61% overall there that believe he had dealings, 42%, Dana, think that Joe Biden acted illegally when he was vice president in those business dealings. 38% say not involved. 18% said he acted unethically, but not illegally. But that is a significant number as well.
All right, guys. So we got to talk about the impeachment. Once again, I know I've been talking about that all week. Okay, but I had to talk about it again because, as you guys know, the mainstream liberal media is screaming there's no evidence, right? There's no evidence for Joe Biden to be impeached or to have this impeachment inquiry, which is not impeachment, it's just an investigation, right?
Supports launching an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, though he hasn't presented exact evidence that President Biden did anything wrong.
So having months and months of conversation and hearings and news coverage of, well, what exactly did go on with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's business dealings. And as we've all said, no evidence yet has been presented. But
that the Bidens have made a lot of money, so on and so forth. Again, no evidence that we have seen.
Even some House Republicans say they're not convinced evidence exists. Plus, Republicans insinuated they might not back the move. They might not vote for it, given the lack of evidence to support such a drastic action.
But House Republicans have so far not provided evidence that Biden directly profited off his son's business deals or made any decisions as vice president because of them.
There's no evidence to launch an investigation to find more evidence, right? Which is exactly what the mainstream liberal media is saying, except there is circumstantial evidence, okay? There's plenty of circumstantial evidence suggesting that Joe Biden sold out the American people in exchange for foreign policy decisions as vice president that personally benefited him, his son, and his family, okay? But again, despite this circumstantial evidence has gotten people locked up in prison for years and years and years. The mainstream liberal media continues to scream no evidence. And the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, who has faced a lot of criticism from Democrats and some Republicans for launching this impeachment inquiry, bullied a liberal reporter into admitting that there is evidence to impeach or to have an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden. Take a look.
What impeachment inquiry is to do is to get answers to questions. Are you concerned about all the stuff that was just recently learned? Do you have any concern? Have you asked the White House any questions?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe the president lied to the American public when he said he'd never talked to his son about business dealings? Yes or no? It's all right.
I can't answer that.
You can't answer that? Do you believe when they said the president went on conference calls? Do you believe that happened?
That's what the testimony says.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe the president went to Cafe Milano and had dinner with the clients of Hunter Biden, who believes he got those clients because he was selling the brand?
That's what the testimony says.
Okay. Do you believe Hunter Biden, when you saw the video of him driving a Porsche, that he got $143,000 to buy that Porsche the next day? Do you believe the $3 million from the Russian oligarch that was transferred to the shell companies that the Bidens controlled after the dinner from Cafe Milano took place?
So the testimony says.
Okay, then I go back. Do you think the president lied that he...
But is that an impeachable? Is lying an impeachable?
Well, you want to know... I'm not saying impeachment. All I'm saying is I would like to know answers to these questions. The American public like to know, and that's what impeachment inquiry provides.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, that clip is important because I'm honestly convinced that these people in the mainstream liberal media are just flat out lying, right? They're just flat out lying to people, and they're pretending that there's no evidence because the Democrats and Joe Biden told them to come out and say there's no evidence, even though they know that there's a ton of circumstantial evidence. And again, if this was Trump, they would not be screaming there's no evidence, right? Because they know that there's a difference between circumstantial evidence and direct evidence, right? They know there's a difference, but they're pretending like there's no difference, even though they know that there is circumstantial evidence. They're trying to play the American people like they're dumb. The reason why I know this, okay, I believe this, is because you have some people like, for example, Sonny Holston, who twice now has said the quiet part out loud in regards to openly admitting the evidence against Joe and Hunter Biden. And this time she goes as far as even to acknowledge that she's knowledgeable on some of the claims that people like Tony Bobulinski have made, which is that Joe Biden is the big guy. In fact, she actually uses the term the big guy verbatim. Take a look.
What I don't believe is political prosecution are his business dealings in Ukraine and China. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that should be looked into. Now, they have looked into it for his association with the president for 5 years, and they haven't found anything. But I don't know how he was qualified to work in Ukraine, to work in China. And he also seemed to, in my opinion, present that he had access to his father. There were phone calls like, let's speak to the big guy. That's problematic. Yeah. Not as problematic as Jared getting $2 billion from the Middle East, and not as problematic as Ivanka getting all of those trademarks in China. That doesn't seem to be investigated.
Said to me that I don't care about Hunter Biden, honestly. He's not running for president. He didn't get the Middle East. Biden's never appointed him to anything. No. And there's a lot of people in families that drop their daddy's name, their mom's name. They try to, the nepotism runs rich. But I was concerned if they have to come forward with some of the international business things. I hated the connection between Trump and Russia. That bothered me. In the name of consistency, anytime you have politicians dealing, like maybe it happens more than I realize.
Trump Jr. in Russia.
Right. But also right now, if there was something going on, which I believe there probably was with Hunter, whether they ever linked that to the president, I don't know. But if that's the case, I'd want to know that for sure.
Yeah. There's also
but the gun thing and the tax thing and to even put it on the same level of that,
it has an appearance of impropriety. As a matter of fact, this is a little piece of personal trivia. I believe I am the only White House reporter who asked about Hunter Biden and Burisma during the Obama administration, because as soon as that deal was announced that he was going on the board of Burisma, he was going to be paid about $50,000 a month, I went and I asked Jay Carney, who was then the White House press secretary. I said, his father is the vice president and he's in charge of Ukraine policy.
Yeah.
Isn't that at the very least unseemly? It may not be illegal, but I mean, come on.
What did Jay say?
So he said, well, he gave me basically a non-answer saying that the vice president had nothing to do with this. Yeah. And that, Hunter Biden's going to do what Hunter Biden's going to do.
And it got reviewed by the State Department, didn't it?
Yeah.
And approved, which I think it shouldn't have.
I mean, look, you can say this looks like sleazy, it doesn't look right, but the question is there anything illegal? And is there any evidence whatsoever that Joe Biden actually took part in this and profited? And there is none.
As serious as what's going on with the Trump kids, with Jared and Ivanka? Which is more serious?
Well, Jared Kushner has an arrangement with the Saudis. It's a $2 billion venture capital fund, which he makes quite a bit of money off.
What did he have to give him for that?
Certainly, Jared's has been more lucrative than Hunter Biden was in terms of actual money.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Okay, this is how you know that the mainstream liberal media is so disingenuous when it comes to this conversation about Biden, the impeachment inquiry, Hunter Biden, Ukraine, because they all know that Joe Biden was selling influence overseas. They all know Joe Biden was making foreign policy decisions in exchange for money. Okay, this is what he was doing. Sonny Holston literally admits that, Hunter Biden got on the phone with the big guy. Where do you think she gets that from? You think she used the big guy randomly? No, because she's very well aware of the testimony from Tony Bobulinski, okay, who confirmed that Joe Biden's the big guy, all right? If anybody that knows anything about this Hunter Biden laptop stuff knows that Joe Biden's the big guy, right? So she knows. She knows everything. I mean, again, I just did a video probably yesterday, a couple days ago, in which she basically listed out all the evidence, right? All the evidence of Joe Biden being involved with Hunter. This guy, Joseph Carl, who works at ABC, they bring him on and say, well, there's no evidence. While at the same time, he admits that he pressed the White House press secretary at the time in regards to the sketchiness of the fact that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma and the conflicts of interest with Joe Biden running the foreign policy in Ukraine for the United States. So again, all these people are very well aware and they know what's going on, but they're just coming out here and saying the White House talking points and pretending that there's no evidence, even though they know there's evidence, right? They're doing it to try to run defense for the Biden administration, and they just sound stupid at this point. At this point, they just sound stupid, right? It sounds very stupid to come out here and to list the evidence and then to turn around and say, well, there's no evidence. This is why the polls show what the polls show in regards to how the American people feel about this situation, right? This is why the polls show that they believe that Joe was involved with Hunter, because the mainstream media sounds so dumb talking out of both sides of their mouth, claiming that there's no evidence while at the same time admitting that there's evidence. Like, this is how dumb they think that people are. And then these people, all they can cry is, what about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump? Right? That's what they do. I think at one point, Sarah Haynes brought up Trump and Russia, right? And I'm like, well, we've already proved that Trump doesn't have any real relationship with Russia. We've already proved that's not the case. But you know who apparently does? Biden does, right? Because apparently Biden is meeting with Russian oligarchs, okay, for, dinner or whatever, for coffee at cafes. And then after that, his son is getting $1 million payments, and Biden is leaving this same person off the sanctions list, even though we're sanctioning everybody and their mama that's associated with Russia. Look, here's the thing. Jared Kushner had him a venture firm, right? The Saudis invested in it. Could there be some conflicts of interest there? Definitely. Is there some nepotism there? Definitely. However, best believe, considering how the Democrats went after every single witch hunt that they could when it came to Trump, if there was something there, the Democrats would have investigated it. They would have made a big deal about it if something was there. Now, the only reason I can imagine that they wouldn't make a big deal out of it is because all of them, Republicans and Democrats, are basically doing the influence peddling scheme, which probably is the case, right? That's probably the case. All these politicians are influence peddling. Okay, and this is why these people want to boohoo, whine, and cry about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump in response to Biden and Hunter Biden. Because it's so commonplace in Washington that the wink, wink, and a nod is that, well, you know, you're not supposed to make a big deal about it, right? You're not supposed to say anything about it, even though we know that it's corrupt and that, you know, a lot of stuff is probably not legal and politicians shouldn't be, you know, doing this. And it happens so much that, you know, we're not really supposed to, again, make a big deal out of it, right? But the Republicans are taking advantage of the fact that Joe Biden's corruption was so obvious and in your face, okay? Because, again, with Jared Kushner and Ivanka, you know, hey, Jared worked for the White House, but you couldn't have connected it back to Trump, right? I mean, there's no connection to Trump actually benefiting, which is, again, the hilarious part. Because they keep trying to bring that up, but there's no evidence of Trump benefiting from that, right? There's literally no connection to Trump. But with Joe and Hunter Biden, there is evidence, okay, that Joe is linked to Hunter and that Joe was benefiting, right? That's the difference, right? It's not really about Hunter as much as about Joe. They want to pretend that it's about Hunter. It's not about Hunter. It's about Joe. I don't give a damn about Hunter, right? I think he should go to jail, but I'm not concerned about him. My only concern when it comes to Hunter is getting to Joe. Right? Because Joe's the big guy, right? As Sonny Holston admitted. So again, it's just so funny to me to listen to these people clearly tell you that they know in their head that this guy, Joe Biden, is basically screwed, right? Because all these politicians do it. Okay, they know that this is so commonplace in Washington that, again, you know, it's very likely that Joe Biden is guilty. They know, they're well aware of the allegations. They're well aware of the evidence. And for them to come out here and try to pretend like there's no evidence, it's hilarious to me. It really is. But again, if they got to bring down Joe to bring down everybody else, I'm cool with that too, right? I want to get rid of all the corruption on both sides, okay? I'm just saying. So, hey, you know, again, it's just so funny to continue to see this tap dance from the mainstream liberal media for the Biden administration. This is why nobody trusts them, right? This is why they can scream all they want about there being no evidence, but the polls literally show that the American people aren't buying into that, right? It goes to show you that the American people are smarter, at least on this issue, than the mainstream liberal media believes. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.